Arrogance, fraud, and a stunning downfall. Watch how one man's wealth couldn't save him from justice. The courtroom buzzed like a hive of restless bees, tension crackling in the air. People packed the benches, eyes flicking toward the defendant's table. Whispers passed from one mouth to the next, each rumor more scandalous than the last. Then he walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal gray designer suit. He carried himself with confidence bordering on arrogance. His slicked-back hair gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and he smirked at the crowd as if they had gathered to admire him, not judge him. Ethan Grayson, a name that had dominated headlines for weeks, looked more like a guest of honor than a defendant accused of stealing millions from struggling families. But it wasn't his entrance that turned heads. It was what happened when Judge Monica Lee entered the courtroom. Dressed in her black robe, Judge Lee moved with quiet authority. She didn't need to raise her voice or look at the crowd to command respect. Her presence was enough. Her reputation preceded her, a no-nonsense judge who valued justice above all else. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Monica Lee," the bailiff announced, and everyone stood, everyone except Ethan Grayson. The room fell silent. All eyes shifted to the defendant, who remained seated casually, flipping through a legal pad as though the proceedings were a trivial inconvenience. His lawyer whispered urgently, but Ethan waved him off with a dismissive flick of his wrist. Judge Lee paused at her bench, her gaze piercing, face betraying nothing. Silence grew heavier with every passing second. A murmur rippled through the crowd, disbelief palpable. Who did this think he was? But Ethan didn't flinch. His expression was smug, almost daring the judge to react. "You may be seated," Judge Lee said calmly but firmly. She didn't address the slight yet. The atmosphere had shifted. The tension wasn't just palpable, it was suffocating. But this was only the beginning. Ethan Grayson was about to learn that even the wealthiest and most entitled are not above the law. Ethan wasn't just wealthy. He was the kind of rich that made headlines: luxury yachts, multi-million-dollar mansions on both coasts, private jets, and parties rivaling celebrities. His business empire, Grayson Investments, had once been praised as a beacon of financial success, but behind the glamour lay a darker truth. Grayson's rise was built on deception, promising small business owners and middle-class families a chance to secure their futures. He convinced hundreds to invest their life savings in fraudulent schemes. Retirement accounts, college funds, even entire family inheritances vanished in an instant. The fallout was devastating. Families lost homes, parents struggled to feed their children, and elderly couples faced the terrifying prospect of spending their final years in poverty. The ripple effects of his greed spread far and wide. But to Ethan, it was just business. When investigators finally caught up with him, the evidence was staggering. Bank records, falsified documents, and testimony from former employees painted a damning picture. Yet even as the walls closed in, Ethan remained confident. "I've got the best lawyers money can buy," he told reporters outside his mansion. "This will blow over. It always does." For a while, it seemed he might be right. His legal team filed motion after motion, delaying the trial for months. They painted him as a misunderstood entrepreneur, a scapegoat for others' failures. But no amount of legal maneuvering could erase the mountain of evidence or the heartbreak of his victims. When the trial finally began in San Francisco, the courtroom was packed daily with people seeking justice, or at least some semblance of it. Among them was Angela Martinez, a widowed mother who lost her home after investing with Grayson. Her youngest daughter was forced to drop out of college. Sitting beside her was Peter Vaughn, a retired firefighter who spent decades saving for retirement, only to end up living in his brother's spare room. Their stories, and countless others, were shared in gut-wrenching detail. Angela's voice broke as she described the day she realized she couldn't make the mortgage payment. "I begged them not to take the house," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But they didn't care. My kids had to sleep in the car for weeks. Do you know what that feels like?" Peter's testimony was just as harrowing. I spent decades running into burning buildings, he said, voice heavy with anger, and this man burned my future to the ground without a second thought. But through it all, Ethan sat unbothered, often leaning back in his chair, scrolling on his phone or whispering jokes to his attorney. To him, these were just stories, irrelevant noise that wouldn't change the outcome he believed was already in his favor. The press ate it up. Headlines screamed about his arrogance, lack of remorse, and bold disrespect toward the court. Public opinion was turning against him, but Ethan didn't care. To him, public opinion didn't write checks. His lawyer tried to spin the narrative. Mr. Grayson deeply regrets any hardship caused, the attorney said during a press conference, but he remains confident that the truth will prevail. The truth, however, was that Ethan had no intention of admitting guilt. He was counting on the system bending in his favor like it always had before, but this time there was one factor Ethan hadn't expected: Judge Monica Lee. She wasn't like anyone he'd dealt with before. The trial was a spectacle. News vans lined the courthouse, reporters jostling to catch every detail. Inside, tension grew as witness after witness took the stand, each adding another nail to Ethan Grayson's metaphorical coffin. But it wasn't just the testimonies that shocked the audience, it was Ethan's behavior. On the third day, the prosecution presented damning emails where Ethan explicitly ordered his team to falsify records and mislead investors. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecutor read aloud, "Make the numbers look good. We need these suckers to sign on the dotted line." The words hung like poison. Angela Martinez, sitting front row, shook her head in disbelief. Peter Vaughn clenched his fist. Ethan smirked. The prosecutor asked Ethan if he recognized the email, but his lawyer objected. Judge Lee overruled and insisted he answer. Ethan leaned into the microphone, condescending. "Yes, I recognize it, but it's just business talk. You wouldn't understand." Whispers erupted. The judge struck her gavel. "Order in the court." She warned Ethan to watch his tone. This was not a boardroom. Ethan remained unfazed, amused as if it were a game. His arrogance grew, interrupting witnesses, rolling his eyes, whispering loudly to his lawyer. The audience watched in disbelief as he treated the courtroom like his stage. Then came Angela Martinez's testimony. She stepped up, trembling, holding a folded paper. Her voice shaky but heavy with pain. "I trusted him, and he destroyed my family's future." Ethan didn't even look at her, scrolling casually on his phone. The prosecutor pointed out Ethan's distraction. Judge Lee ordered him to put his phone away. He hesitated but complied. Angela continued, disbelief shaking her voice as she described his lack of basic decency. By the end, no eye was dry except Ethan's. The prosecution rested, and the defense tried everything, discrediting witnesses, twisting the story, even painting Ethan as a victim. But the cracks were too big. Judge Lee remained composed, a steady force, though her patience was thin. On the final day, the courtroom was electric with anticipation. Victims filled the gallery, faces mixed with anger and hope. Ethan sat relaxed, even grinning at cameras as if sure of victory. When Judge Lee spoke, the room fell silent. "Mr. Grayson, you are guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. The evidence is overwhelming. You manipulated, exploited, and destroyed countless lives for personal gain." Ethan leaned back, unreadable. The judge continued, "Throughout the trial, you showed no remorse. Your behavior was disgraceful. You insulted your victims, disregarded this court's authority, and treated these proceedings as beneath you." The crowd murmured agreement. Angela Martinez, in the front row, clasped her hands tightly. Her hands clenched tightly, knuckles white. Judge Lee's tone grew colder. "Justice, Mr. Grayson, is not about wealth, power, or privilege. It is about accountability, and today you will face the consequences of your actions." The room was so quiet you could hear the faint rustling of paper. Ethan's smirk faltered for the first time as he straightened in his chair. The judge declared, I sentence you to federal prison without parole." Gasps erupted from the crowd. Ethan's face froze, blood draining from his cheeks. He had expected a slap on the wrist, maybe some time in a comfortable facility, but this was unheard of for someone of his status. Judge Lee wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I order the immediate liquidation of your assets to repay the victims of your crimes. Every dollar you stole will be returned to the families you devastated." The courtroom broke into stunned murmurs. Angela Martinez pressed her hands to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Peter Vaughn leaned back, eyes wide with disbelief. Ethan jumped up, face red with anger. "You can't do this," he shouted, voice echoing. "I'm Ethan Grayson. You can't treat me like a common criminal." Judge Lee's gavel slammed down, her expression unyielding. "Mr. Grayson, sit down." But Ethan wasn't done. "This is a joke. I'll appeal this. I'll ruin your career, Judge." Bailiffs moved closer, ready to intervene. Judge Lee remained calm, voice sharp as a knife. "This is my courtroom, Mr. Grayson. Show respect. Escort the defendant out." As he was led away, Ethan continued to protest, his voice fading with each step. The courtroom erupted into applause. Rare, but fitting. Judge Lee turned to the audience, expression softening slightly. "Justice has been served," she said. "Let this be a reminder. No one, no matter how powerful, is above the law." As the courtroom emptied and cameras flashed outside, one question lingered. Would this sentence truly change a man like Ethan Grayson? The courtroom was nearly empty, save for a few reporters and victims gathering their belongings. The buzz of excitement remained, but for those directly affected by Ethan's crimes, emotions were complex. Angela Martinez stood by the courthouse steps, clutching her purse tightly. A reporter asked how she felt after the verdict. She hesitated, then said, "I feel relieved, but no sentence will erase the damage he caused. My kids and I are still rebuilding, but at least now we have hope." Nearby, Peter Vaughn spoke with a friend. "It's not just about the years he's getting," he said, shaking his head. "It's about the message. People like him think they're untouchable. Today proves they're not." Inside her chambers, Judge Monica Lee sat quietly, staring out the window at the commotion below. She felt no triumph or victory, just steady resolve. Her role wasn't about personal satisfaction, but about fairness and reminding everyone that the scales of justice can balance even against wealth and privilege. Ethan Grayson's name would make headlines for a while longer, but for those he wronged, the chapter was closing. Financial restitution would help many start over, but the scars he left would take longer to heal. As weeks passed, the story sparked conversations nationwide. It became a rallying cry for accountability and equal standards for all in power. People shared their own stories of injustice, drawing strength from the verdict. Perhaps the most powerful moment came from Angela's youngest daughter, Sophia, who wrote a letter to Judge Lee published in a local newspaper. "Thank you for standing up for my family. Thank you for showing us that people like Ethan Grayson can't get away with hurting people like us. You didn't just give us justice, you gave us a second chance." The story of Ethan Grayson's trial was more than courtroom drama. It was a reminder of ordinary people's resilience, the importance of integrity, and the belief that justice can and should prevail no matter the odds. So, as you reflect on this story, ask yourself, what does accountability mean to you? And in your life, how can you ensure fairness and justice are not just ideals, but actions? Because in the end, justice isn't just the court's responsibility, it's something we all must fight for every day.